Nancy, thank you for joining us and helping us to tell your story and the story of how Agenda was able to help you sell your business. Just to get us started, if you don't mind, would you just kind of share your story before you went into hospice ownership, and then how you got into that, and just kind of let people know just a little bit about you?
Okay. My name is Nancy Kernell. I am a previous owner of a hospice agency. And prior to opening the hospice, I graduated from nursing school in 1996, and I worked for a assisted living facility, and I had hospice agencies that would come into the assisted living facility. And so one day I was talking to the girls, and they were like, well, you know, why don't you moonlight with us? And so I started kind of moonlighting and fell in love with hospice, and ended up quitting my job with the assisted living facility and going to work for an agency, in my hometown. And so I did that for about 7 years, and I had a really good friend of mine that owned a home health, and she was also a nurse. And uh, she kept encouraging me to open a hospice. She's like, why don't you open your own hospice? Why are you working for another company? And so in 2004, she and I and another, it was actually her secretary. We just kind of went in together, and we opened Area Community Hospice in 2004.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
Yeah, so 17 years you built that business. Along
mhm.
the way, what were some of the struggles to getting it off the ground? And was there ever a time where you really felt like that plane was in the air and flying at 5,000 feet? And
It was, I think, for the first 2.5 years, I was the only nurse. Like I said, my business partner at the time, she owned a home health, and she was not a hospice nurse. She did not like the hospice part of it. And her secretary was still billing for her. And so she was working for her full time. So I was running this company pretty much by myself. So for the first 2.5 years, I was the nurse on call. I was everything. I was the administrator, the bereavement coordinator. I mean, I did the whole deal. And so I would say it took about 2.5 years before we were able to see, or what I thought hospice was going to, start coming into fruition. Because back then, which I think it's worse now when you're starting a hospice, but back then, when you were ready for your survey, you had your 5 patients, and you were ready for survey, it would take them months to come
Mhm.
and do your survey, and you can't go back and bill for those patients that you've already taken care of. So you're just doing pro bono. You're just
Wow.
taking care of, and so we admitted our first patient in August. We did not get our survey until November, and we weren't even able to bill until January of the following year. So it was tough. I mean, we just took turns taking money out of our savings account, making payroll, for the, and so yeah, it took about 2.5 years, and I guess we were probably in 5 years. And my business partner, she was like, I'm not hospice, I'm home health. Why don't you buy me out? And so ended up buying her out, and so it was just me. And then of course our biller that really wasn't working in billing at the time. But so I would say it took a good 7 years before I felt like I could take a vacation and be gone a few days and know that I had nurses that were going to take care of the business.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So when you first started, so that was the beginning, and then 17 years later, how did operations look different at the end of your
Oh
time?
gosh, 17 years later. So it was great. I mean, I would say year 14, 15, I had a solid staff. I mean, I could, it was a well oiled machine. I could, stay home for the day, and I knew everything was getting taken care of. It was great. Then COVID hit, and that was kind of a scary situation for everybody, because of the lockdown, because they didn't allow us into facilities and stuff, but mainly the safety of my staff. So I went back out into the field and I was the COVID nurse. I wouldn't allow anybody else to see any COVID patients or go into facilities that had COVID. I was the nurse that went in because I wanted to make sure my staff was taken care of.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of a trying time. It kind of changed a lot because we were such a tight family. I had 36 employees. I had two offices, one in Plainview, one in Lubbock. And we, during IDG, we would meet, we would eat together. And then during COVID, we kind of split that up. People were working from home. We had to expand our offices. We added offices, made it bigger where people weren't, interacting, the ones that were having to come into the office. So it was kind of a trying time. It was good. And then I think my husband, who was a county commissioner at the time, he was talking about retirement. And it was one of those deals that we always talked about, that if he retired, I was going to retire as well, because I wasn't going to be working and he not. So I was like, yeah, that's not going to work for me. And so he did retire. And then that's when kind of I was like, okay, well, maybe I'm ready, to start uh, talking about selling, or he was already in that retirement talking about going in. And then that's where Agenda came in, and I received a phone call one day, and for some reason that day I just kind of it was Noah. I spoke to Noah and I just told him, I said, I don't even know how this works. I don't know where to start. I don't know what my company is worth. And I was not intimidated by him at all. It was just like we were having a conversation like you and I are right now. And he was like, well, let's jump on a call. Let's find out more about your business and stuff. And so I was just like open to it. And of course I received phone calls all the time. I mean, there was always calls, we have investors in your area. We have, and it was always like, I wasn't interested. And it was just, for some reason, it was just so easy to, because it was just like, have you ever thought about it? Yes, every owner has thought about it at one time or another, whether it's, somebody that came in with a bad attitude, one of your employees or something, but you have thought about it. And so, and he just said, have you ever thought about it? And I was like, yeah, I have, a few
Mhm.
times. And so, but it was always that I wasn't sure that I was ready.
Sure. Yeah. So it's one thing for that seed to kind of be planted that you want to sell, and then over time it kind of grows, and then a pivotal moment like your husband retiring happens, and that really
Mhm.
really opens your mind to it. And maybe that's the answer to this question. But so when you first started to really decided to pull the trigger on selling your business, what was it? Why was it important for you to dedicate your energy to this? Was it retirement, or was it something else, or a combination of things?
I think it was a combination of things. And actually, when I signed on with Agenda, it took me a while to get all the information that they needed, just because I was like, is this really happening? This was my baby. I, brought this up from nothing, being the only employee with one other person. And it was really funny because when we started, my other employee that I had, he was helping me. We were writing the policies and procedures and stuff, and we were like really saying, okay, maybe you can take a chaplain course online or something, so we can get the chaplain. So we would have to hire more people. So yeah, so I think there was a lot going on. My parents were getting older, and so I knew they were probably going to need some more help. And I have a lot of family that works for me,
Yeah.
and so I had a lot of family that I had sisters that were working for me, and so it was just kind of like I was ready in a lot of ways. there was more Medicare regs. You had your tip. You had all kinds of stuff that was coming, and sometimes that, even though you knew that you were doing what you were supposed to, you're still documenting. The documentation was starting to take away from patient care, and that was one of the big complaints that the nurses had. They're like, we feel like we're documenting more than we're spending time with the patient, and unfortunately, that's something that happens, and that's just something you have to do. And so, it was kind of a combination of, my husband was getting ready to retire, um, and and I was ready. I was ready. It was perfect timing for me. It was just something that I had already grown as much as I could for the area that I was in, as far as being able to, I was the owner. I was the top. And so I was really keeping perfect great employees from moving up because I was as far as they could go. And so I could put somebody in the administrative position, but then that was as big as we are gonna get. We had already, gone into to another market, and I just didn't feel like I had the energy to go into another city and started, because I felt like I was a smaller hospice. I had probably a 70, 80 census at the time. I didn't qualify for like the really good insurances. So I lost some really good potential nurses and other employees because they could go to the hospital and get better benefits than I was able to. So it was kind of it was a good opportunity for my staff. Where I found a company, or Agenda found me a company that, offered 401ks, offered all kinds of great benefits for my employees. So I felt really good about, okay, this is good. This is good because it's not like I'm just going to leave them hanging there. I'm actually giving them something better than what I was
Mm,
offered.
yeah, and that's the fear of so many of our clients, is that will their people be taken care of? So
Mhm,
it's
mhm.
it's always interesting to see how they usually end up being,
Yeah.
better off for it,
Mhm,
in the long run,
mhm,
and as well as you. And
mhm.
so, how long from Noah's call until you signed a listing? How long did that take for you to really take action on it?
I signed the listing fairly quickly. Once we had the call and the Agenda team jumped on, and I kind of met the rest of the staff, Alex and Al, and Dutch was on there. And so once I met the team, I mean, I think I signed pretty quick. I will say I leaned on Noah a lot. We were constantly texting, and he would text me, and he was like, "Hey, I need this information," and I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to get it to you," But it was it was like I said, it took me a while to get that to them, and so I actually signed the listing, and then when we were ready to actually put everything out there, I had to sign another one because that's how long it took me. And so, but he never gave up on me, and I appreciate that. It wasn't like this lady's not serious. I was serious. I was just having to emotionally break those. Really think about it. Hey, am I really doing this? And I need to get this information to him. And I think a lot of I just always felt like maybe my books aren't clean enough. Maybe I haven't documented everything properly. And so he walked me through all that. So it to sign, it didn't take a long time. To get all the information to him, it took me a little while.
Yeah, completely understandable. And I
Yeah.
think, during that time from signing the listing all the way until the finish line, what excuse me, what were some of the doubts and fears? If you could pull back the curtain, and what were the doubts and fears that came up in your mind along the way? Like, is this going to get to the finish line?
You know, I will be honest with you. Agenda worked really hard for me. That as soon as we, um, I'm I'm drawing a blank. What's it called when you guys do like the little portfolio on your company?
The sim.
The sim. Once the sim was ready, and they, send me the sim, and I looked at it, and it was really neat to see that what you've accomplished over the years. How they started, that this was our start, and this is how we've grown. This is where we've branched off to, and so that was really neat to look at. But once they got that out, it was like a matter of hours, maybe a couple of days where I was on the phone and says, "Hey, we've got some people that really want to do an LOI," and I was like, "Oh wow, that was quick. I don't know." I was like, that was a little too fast for me, and so they were really good. I mean, they were like, "Okay, well, let's slow down," and so I got to actually talk to some different companies, and really I felt they were interviewing me, but I was also interviewing them to see what they were going to do for my staff, because that was my biggest concern. How was this going to affect the people that have been so loyal to me and have worked for me for, I had employees that worked for 17 years for me. And so I wanted to make sure that they were taken care of. So
Yeah. And you mentioned that other people had called over the years, and
mhm,
the timing just wasn't right, or
mhm,
something may have been off. What was it about Agenda that attracted you? That these are the people I want to take what I've built for 17
mhm.
years and trust them to get it to a successful close. What made Agenda different than the other calls you received?
um, I had some calls from some other companies, and they were very specific. We just have investors in your area. I was so passionate about hospice. I didn't feel like hospice was just an investment; it's a mission.
Yeah.
And I kind of grabbed that when I was talking to Noah, when he was like, we're a Christian based company. This is, and I felt that. And so I prayed about it. I mean, it was like a big deal. Talked to my husband, and so I told him that I had set up a call with Agenda. And so I remember when Noah, which this has been several years ago, Noah got on the screen, and he was very young. He was a young guy, and I was like, "Oh yeah, no, I don't know about this. He's young." And then Alex gets on, and then Al said, "Guys, this is a big decision you guys are fixing to make. And if you'll allow me," and I'll get emotional again, because this is something that, this is, this is, this is my baby. And this is something that I knew I had been called to do. I had been called to open this hospice. And Al said, "If you allow me to open with a prayer, because this decision you guys are about to make is very big." And to me, that was just, you know, that was confirmation for me. This is
Yeah.
what I've been praying about. This was the company that was going to make sure that I was taken care of, that my staff was going to be taken care of, and it was, and they did. They
Yeah.
they they did a great job, and I have no regrets whatsoever.
Yeah.
Um, I know they were a godsend, and I do
Yeah.
I do believe that. So,
That's great.
so
And I think anybody who watches this later is going to share that same heart that you have. Almost every owner that we deal with, it's mission based, and
it is.
so to hear that from you, I think people will connect with that. Uh,
Mhm,
and thank you for sharing that. Uh, Unexpected things along the way. So there's expectations of whether that's what you thought you might have been worth before you ever even received that call from Noah, versus going through the valuation process and getting that number.
mhm.
uh, where were you before the call with us in terms of your expectations for a sale, and then through that process, I guess just walk us through your expectations from before meeting us and through all the way to the end. Were they met at the end of the day, or were they exceeded, and how did that go?
I had some friends that owned large hospices. I served on the Texas New Mexico Hospice Board, so I knew a lot of hospice owners. Several of the owners had large, 300 plus patients. So I kind of knew what some of the hospices were going for, but also knew that my market was a lot smaller because I'm rural. I didn't have that. So when the evaluation, they exceeded the evaluation. They
Yeah.
exceeded it. I was very pleased, and so my husband and I already had a number that we're like, okay, if we can get this, we'll sell it, and they exceeded that a
Yeah.
lot. So yeah, so I was like, okay, yeah, that's good.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And uh, so up, you get an LOI for a number that's bigger than you had expected going into the whole process, and then you go into due diligence and everything that goes from there into the purchase agreement and closing. Did anything happen from in the due diligence phase up and through closing that made you think maybe this might not get to the finish line?
When we were doing the due diligence, I brought in my ex business partner because she had sold her home health and she had gone into consulting. So I brought her in. And so she helped me a lot with the due diligence, getting everything together. And that is probably one of the biggest things that helped a lot was having somebody walk that due diligence with me. It wasn't like, we just have this and I need you to put this in the box or put this, And so it was having somebody work in the back. And that's something that I would recommend to any person that is selling their hospice is either hire a consultant or do something because you're busy running a business and you're having to run this business where your employees don't know what you're doing because you don't want that fear and them start bailing ship and trying to find another job. So, so you're trying to keep it all under wraps. You're all doing this. Um, so I was able to, hire somebody to help me with the due diligence and get all that stuff ready for me so that it could. So that was probably the biggest deal. We did have one hiccup. One of my Lubbock office, one of my branches, there was something wrong with the Medicare, when we registered the Medicare, and I thought that is going to take so long. And it's going to take so long. We already have the LOI. We were already in. And so the company was like, we're real interested. We just have to get this fixed. And we had it fixed within a week. And so like I'm telling you, confirmation, it was time. God was in all this because they were like, it usually takes a few months, but we're still real interested in your company. You know, I think that happened like on a Thursday. By Monday, when we rechecked it, everything was good. And so that was the only thing we're like, okay, well, this might not work, but it did. And so,
Yeah.
it did, but
Yeah.
that was the only thing. And like I said, having a consultant come in and help with the due diligence because it's a lot of information.
Yeah. It's
It's
a
a lot
lot.
of information. It's a lot. It's a lot, and it's stuff that as a small business owner, I wasn't pulling together a lot of this stuff on a daily basis. I just kind of knew,
Hmm.
I knew what it took to run my business. And when you're doing due diligence, they want a little bit more specifics.
Yeah.
So it was good having somebody work on that while I was still running the business.
Yeah. And when I called you yesterday, we spoke for a couple minutes just to kind of prepare for this
Mhm.
and let you know how this was going to go. And you were in your garden and tending your garden. So maybe that's a peek into the answer of this question. I don't know, but what has selling done for your life? What has it meant for you as your life going forward?
Right after the sale, I did sign a in my contract with the cell, I did agree to work, and I did agree to work part-time for 1 year for the new
Yeah.
company. And that was a negotiation. That was something that Agenda helped me with a lot. I was like, I don't want to keep working. If I'm selling, I don't want to keep working. And so my Agenda team was, like, she wants to sell, but she doesn't want to continue to work. And so we kind of went back and forth on that negotiation. They wanted 2 years. And I said I would give them 9 months. I said, I'll give you 9 months, women make babies in 9 months, I was like, I'll give you 9 months. And they said 1 year. And I came back with part-time and they said, okay. And so I actually worked for a year and 9 months for them full
Oh,
time. And I
nice.
enjoyed every bit of it. I was
Yeah.
just ready but I think the biggest thing it has done, you don't have that stress. You don't have that stress. I live in a small community, and there is an assisted living right down the street for me. And when you would see other hospice vehicles in the neighborhood, it would just stress me out because I'm like, okay, who's playing in my playground? What's going on here? This is. And so now I can look at these cars and I'm like, okay, you don't have that stress.
Yeah.
Um, my husband's always wanted some land. We bought a ranch, and so it's about an hour and 15 minutes right off the Cap up here in the northern part of Texas, and so it's beautiful. Our our logo was the butterfly, and so that was something real big that my son, who lives in Houston, he wanted that the butterfly somewhere. So we ended up naming the ranch Rancho Mariposa, which is mariposa is butterfly in Spanish. And we have we actually had rebranded, I think in year 16. We kind of
Mhm.
rebranded, had more of a modern butterfly added, but we put our first butterfly is on our sign. Where so when you see our sign, it says Rancho Mariposa, and we have that
Oh,
our first logo, and so it's pretty neat, and we're pretty proud of that.
yeah.
So yeah,
That's fun.
it's good. Yeah, working in the
Yeah.
yard and trying to stay busy, and
That's great.
yeah.
Is there anything in particular in the garden?
I love flowers. So we're doing. I do lots of flowers. I have um, we we do tomatoes, but they're not doing too well this year. It's been so hot. It's been really hot.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
but yeah, that's what we like. I've sent a picture to a friend of mine yesterday, and so I have this little pool just because I don't want to put in a big pool. So I do this little pool, and so sent her a snap yesterday morning when I was outside. She's like, "You really need to get a job." She's like, "You are sending these pictures to all of us who are working." And I'm young. I'm 52 years old, and so it
Yeah.
feels really good
Yeah. That's
to
that's amazing.
some days my husband will say, "What are you going to do today?" And I was like, "Whatever I want." And I might not want to do anything.
Oh, that's great. That is great, and congratulations on getting to feel that feeling.
Thank you.
We all look forward to it one day, and you
Mhm.
got to it. So, my last question for you: if you had 60 seconds, 60 to 90 seconds, to go back in time and give yourself wisdom on what you wish you would have known before selling, what would you go back and tell yourself?
I would um I would tell myself not to sweat the small stuff. Like your books are not going to be perfect. That's okay. You are going to have ad backs. You're going to have, you know, everybody probably has expensed something out through their company that the new company is not going to take over, and that's okay because that's going to be added back. Because I was just like, I mean, I had, uh, you have your company cars, you have stuff like that, and a lot of times the new company is not going to take that, and that's okay because they're going to add that back. I would like don't sweat the small stuff and get a consultant to help you, and then that way it can go faster. Because if I had hired her right off the bat, I would have probably sold within the 6 months. And so so that, I think that's what I would do. And like I said, I really don't have any regrets, but that was probably that kept me from signing on sooner. Was I just thought, I haven't done a really good job in keeping my books, or, I knew I was in compliance and everything else. It was just, the books part.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, congrats again on getting to the finish line. That's it's an amazing accomplishment. Staying in business for 17 years is an accomplishment of itself. To be able to, at the end of the day, sell for more than you ever expected is another one altogether. So, congrats, and thanks for talking to me today.
You bet. Thank you.